Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today I wanted to go over Remnant 2 archetype combinations that I think are either a lot of fun, absolutely broken, or a combination of both. Now, this is going to apply for different types of content, so I'm going to talk about each one individually. But first, this comes from my recent tier list that I did, where people were telling me that certain combinations were absolutely busted, and I agree with that. There are some insane combinations. When I was doing my tier list, it was archetypes as they stand alone, not necessarily with other combinations. Because if I feel like if you have to pick an archetype and you can only pair it with one other archetype to be really effective, that lowers the value of that original archetype. That's just a personal preference. Same thing with versatility matters. What type of content you're taking on matters as far as difficulty. So keeping all that in mind, the first and foremost one, Gunslinger Hunter, is absolutely broken. It's the one that you're going to see at the top of many people's playlists, especially when you get to Nightmare and Apocalypse levels. And that's because it's the glass cannon. It's going to do insane damage. And once you get to the higher levels, you're able to mitigate your survivability a lot more without needing some of your skills or mods in order to do so. So you can stay alive much easier with the Gunslinger Hunter once you have perfect weapons, perfect rings, perfect relics, all that kind of good stuff. So keeping that in mind, at the top tier, Gunslinger Hunter is going to be absolutely broken. So going on from that, I think there's a combination that I really enjoy. Somebody actually in my comments turned me on to this one, and that is Alchemist Medic. If you want to play a pure support class, this one is very good, and it lasts you throughout many different difficulties in the game. You can play it at the end game completely. You can play it as soon as you have it unlocked, and it can be very effective as just essentially a heal bot for your team. Because one of the biggest difficulties people find in co-op is that, yeah, you have bullet spongy enemies, but if one player goes down, it kind of ruins the flow of the boss fight. So keeping everybody up, keeping that momentum going can be very nice, especially if you have a Gunslinger Hunter on your squad who's doing insane DPS but having difficulty staying alive. This would be a combination that work out very, very well, and one that I think should be on people's radars, especially, again, not everyone wants to play a pure support class, but if you do, there is that option. Now, the next one is going to be more for a beginner. If you are new to the Remnant franchise, I've been harping on this for quite some time, but the handler and engineer combination, it makes the game really easy through survivor and veteran difficulties, even if you are new to the genre, new to the franchise and that stuff. And that is because you have a self-res, pretty much automatic. You can get that with Challenger as well, but Challenger really promotes a more aggressive playstyle in your face. So having the handler where you can stay back, you have your pet that can taunt enemies. You could use your pet for either healing, for a shield, or to attack. And you can use your turret to just be consistently putting out damage. And so one thing I think that is underrated, especially when you have new players coming in, getting your dodge timing right is so important. But if you're worried about doing maximum DPS, a lot of people, where they die is that they'll be putting out damage and then all of a sudden they won't be paying attention to one of the attacks. They'll miss the cue for that, and so they'll have to, they won't dodge in time, they'll dodge too late, and they'll end up taking a bunch of damage, and that really sets them off in a way that is going to make the rest of the fight hard because you're kind of recovering at that point. Having something like the handler and the engineer constantly putting out that damage makes early game very, very simple, and I think that's one that I would definitely recommend. So moving on, we have Archon, which is really good. You can combine this with pretty much any of the different archetypes because the mod power generation is absolutely insane. But I personally think that it pairs very, very well with the Summoner. And the reason being, you have that mod generation, and some of the mods really synergize well with the Summoner, in my opinion, in order to output significantly more damage. And the combinations that you get with the Summoner and the Archon are just an insane amount of fun. They're just a blast to use. And while it may not do the damage that a Gunslinger Hunter does, I think survivability is going to be a bit better, and Summoner can be very nice to play as well. Having, again, minions in this game can really be the difference between having to lock in all the time doing your damage and struggling to stay alive, and vice versa. So I do think that can matter. That can be a big help, and that's why I think Summoner with the Archon can be very, very good. Although you can run Summoner engineer as well. And the nice thing is that for your summoner as your primary, the bonus to the mod generation and stuff that you get from the Summoner Prime perk actually benefits from having a turret out at all time as well. So I know a lot of people were telling me that having the turret out for Engineer when you're carrying it can be a big advantage. So that's why I would pair Engineer with a Challenger. I think that's very good. Again, the self-res is always nice with the Challenger, but the fact that you can have your turret in your hand and tank a lot of damage is incredibly useful. And so you can run this with the engineer, the final turret that you have, and just hold that and just do insane burst damage with that while you are face tanking damage as well. So I think the engineer challenger is one that I would recommend a lot of people trying. And yeah, I really don't have anything to pair with the explorer. I think that one is at this point underwhelming as far as a damage one. But overall, those are going to be some of my main recommendations. Oh, the Invader. So this is where we get fun because I feel like the Invader is one that is underrated. And this is what I want to talk about because I don't see enough people running this. So when you're running the Invader, you can run this with pretty much anything. Essentially the dodge that you get with the decoy is incredibly nice, but you can run it with a hunter, and the damage output there, because you have a decoy, because you don't have to worry about dodge rolling, you can focus on doing your damage, because your evasion will automatically keep you from taking damage. You'll essentially automatically use a dodge if you're not if you take damage that you don't expect coming. So the Invader Hunter, while it doesn't rival completely the Gunslinger with that combination for highest DPS, I think it is one that you can ramp up the damage to a crazy degree, especially if you're using something like a bow. That combination works wonders, and I would highly recommend checking it out. So yeah, as far as my top ones that I would recommend, Gunslinger Hunter, especially if you have mastered the game, that's the number one. Alchemist Medic, if you want to be a full support healer. You've got the handler engineer if you want to be, if you're a newer player, if you're just starting the game, you want to really get the ball rolling. And then we've got the Archon with the summoner and the invader with the hunter. All of those work out well. And again, like I said, engineer challenger is another really, really good one. So you can combine any of these. I would highly recommend. The problem with the game is, and this is going to be a minor rant, is that it doesn't encourage you to mix and match early on as much. You really have to. The reason I don't have just gameplay footage for every single one of these combinations, even though I've tried a lot of them out, is the game almost discourages you from doing that, because when you start over a new class and you're starting over from level 1, you don't have any of the perks or anything like that. The unfortunate reality is it does take quite a bit of time to level that up, and the gameplay isn't going to be very impressive. You're not going to get those wow moments because you don't have all the perks unlocked, you don't have your build perfected and everything like that. So leveling up the secondary archetypes, the ones that you're using, so I have a couple that are max level, but the ones that aren't tend to fall behind until I max them out. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Make sure you're trying to level them as much as possible, because once you have them leveled up, they feel very different from where you have them at base level. Anyway, let me know what you guys think of those combinations in the comments down below. Let me know if you agree, disagree, if there's any combinations that I might have missed. Those are some of my favorites. I think you can mix and match a lot more of them, and you'd be surprised by the results. But whatever archetypes you have the most fun with, you can get through the first 3 difficulties, especially once you have the right weapons, mods, rings, relics, and amulets. Once you have all that stuff kind of down pat, you can run whatever archetypes you want through the first 3 difficulties through Nightmare. But once you get to Apocalypse, that's when it gets to be where you need a refined build that is really going to min-max to a different level. Anyway, my name is JoPa. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit that like button if you did. Subscribe to the channel. Helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Remnant 2 content from me going forward. I hope you have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.